Hi guys, I'm back with Dave. If you've been online with us, you know Dave and I are sort of interview buddies these days. And we talk about uh, our topic this time. I said was cabbages and kings, and Dave actually, I'm going to embarrass him. He didn't know what cabbages and kings came from, and I went well, and I had to go look it up to see exactly what the phrase was. Of course, it's Alice in Wonderland, and we talk about Anyway, uh, more than any of you need to know. For those of you who don't know Dave, Dave, I'll let you do the short paragraph to introduce yourself in case folks haven't been in touch with us as we've been chatting over these months.
Yeah, because obviously
So,
you don't need the introduction, but I probably do. So my background is journalism and worked for public radio here in the States, really most of my career. I ended up doing a lot of work for NPR, was chair of their board for many years. And I retired from my day job managing public radio in Milwaukee to do a little consulting and a little teaching. And that's what I've been doing. And I've been a practitioner of GTD for many years. I say a practitioner. I don't say I'm an expert because I think it's just always a work in progress. But I've been really enjoying our opportunities to converse, and hopefully people have been enjoying what we've been talking about.
yeah, well, as you sure know, I was a multi-year huge fan of NPR, and all of that work. Used to listen to it back in when I was in California, and actually was in 1 hour and 2 hour commutes in the car. That's all I listened to.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, loved all of that. Loved just the style and the frankness, the freshness, and the in-depth storytelling.
Yeah.
Which is so rare to hear and to find these days. I mean, everybody's so into the sensational stuff, and uh, again, one of my favorite books now is Humankind. Rutger Bregman has a huge rant about sensational media and how much that has so distorted people's perception of what the world is really like, and that people are really a lot nicer and friendlier and more creative than what you'd see if all you're seeing is the headlines. And so, it's a huge addiction, just the sensational news, that people have. I have to admit, every morning I read at least the front page of the New York Times and their world section edition, and and the Dutch news, here, just to see if something blew up, if I need to be aware of anything going on, really more sort of check in with the world.
Yeah.
But let me poke at you just for a second about your experience with NPR and National Public Radio, and what you think was unique about that. It's had its challenges, obviously, lately with the political world trying to strangle funding, that it's gotten nationally. But
Well, I think to the benefit of NPR, I think that the economic model for public broadcasting in the United States is a pretty strong one, in the sense that it's very dependent upon the contributions of listeners. And I think that's really good because it has that diverse funding base. Whereas what we're seeing now, I mean, most recently, we heard that the political winds in the UK are such that there's a movement to really, in essence, defund the BBC. And that's because the BBC has largely been dependent upon government funding. When government funding goes away, that creates a problem. So I've always said that government funding is an important part of funding for public broadcasting in the States. But I like the fact that we're very dependent upon the contribution of listeners and foundations and corporations. And I think that's what really keeps it strong.
well, just maybe this is a sidebar, but I'm curious, have you kept up with what the equivalent to public radio has been around the world? I know there's several of those, in here in the Netherlands, and they seem to go strong. I don't know around the rest of the world. Were you ever pulled in to coach or advise, or
Well,
look
actually,
in on
one of my
other versions of what you were doing?
yeah, actually, one of my greatest thrills was I've always been a big fan of the BBC, and quite a few years ago, now more than a decade ago, I was brought in to do some work with the BBC as they were trying to, I guess, make their content more interesting and available to people outside of the UK, and they wanted to get more content on the air in the States. And so it was very fascinating to spend time there and work with their people, and they're just absolutely brilliant, and they are so committed to journalism. And I actually also had some good conversations many years ago with the folks at Radio Nederland, who I think were also doing some good things, but clearly didn't have the funding base, and they weren't as strong as the BBC. But I think that government-funded journalism, while it's always somewhat controversial, especially when there's no firewall to protect the content, I think that's important. But I think that a lot of the commercial broadcasters that we're seeing here in the States and elsewhere, have become so commercial, and they have become so dependent on appealing to the masses that journalism kind of falls by the wayside. And that's a real concern of mine.
Yeah, I get it. Well, as you know, Jim Fallon is an old and good friend of mine. And Jim's now writing a lot about journalism and how the press is handling stuff these days, and a voice crying in the wilderness sometimes, it seems, in terms of all that. And everybody's into, I don't know, everybody, it's a YouTube world, and YouTube shorter than 5 minutes. Give me the sound bite, give me the quickie on this. And there's certainly good news for that. I certainly enjoyed a whole lot of stuff I could take 2 minutes or 3 minutes and see on YouTube. It's been it's both fun and educational, sometimes at the same time. So what's your take on that? Do you play with the media at all in that way?
Oh, sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I'm very much like you. I'm a consumer of a lot of different kinds of journalistic sources, and I think the short burst news has its place. When I get in the car, I want to know, like you said, did anything blow up? And so I quickly turn to the news station to find out what's going on. But there's so many complex issues in our world that I really feel it's important to kind of spend the time with the longer form journalism. So I think both have its place. And the other thing is I'm a big proponent of people not consuming just one or two sources, but we live in a very rich world where we can access so much content online. And I think, that's wonderful because we get to read a lot of different versions. I mean, one of the reasons why I'm enamored with the BBC is because I enjoy listening and watching the BBC covering news from the United States, because that's a different perspective. And I think that's a perspective more people should want.
Yeah, I get it. And I love The Guardian. Catherine, my wife, subscribes to The Guardian. And I think The Guardian has that same essence and flavor.
Right.
It's so globally focused. That's one of the reasons we left the States. We love the States, but what we didn't love about the States was its micro focus on just the States. People, I don't know how many people in the States you go, hey, there's another world out there. They go, oh, you really? Who? Yeah. What? They just are not aware of. It's just not sensitive to that stuff.
This is I'm supposed to be interviewing you, so but
turnabout's fair play.
But when I was spending that time at the BBC that I told you about seconds ago, one of the things that I really, really enjoyed was I got to sit in on a lot of their editorial planning meetings. These are meetings that they would have in a conference room early in the morning, like 6, 7 in the morning, where they would have all of their editors gather around a table who represented their economic desk, their health desk, and all of the editors from all around the world would dial in via teleconference, and they'd be on all of the screens. And they would spend an hour talking about what has happened in the world in the last 24 hours. And then that's how they would shape their coverage. They would say, yeah, we'll take that story from Beirut. We'll take that story from Croatia. But to me, I'm sitting there listening to this and being fascinated by so many stories that people were talking about that I was never exposed to. Or if I was, it was just a passing reference. And these are people who are living these stories in Croatia and elsewhere. And to me, that's the kind of journalism that I want. It's not just that kind of run of the mill, like what's the coronavirus doing today? There's so much that is layered beyond that. And I think as good citizens of wherever we reside, I think we need to be exposed to that.
Hear, hear. Okay, enough of me interviewing you. Let me interview you again. I understand you just wrote a book.
Oh, yes. Yes, I did.
It's fascinating because I think it's about leadership, but I've always been fascinated by the concept of leadership, you know, as being in a sort of organizational operating system like I am now, holacracy, that sort of doesn't have job titles. They're just accountabilities. But
Right.
what does leadership mean when you get to flattened organizations and, you know, and so forth? Anyway, I don't want to steal your thunder, so so Dave, promote your book.
Hey, thanks, Dave. Yes, since I retired from my day job, I've been doing a lot of coaching with folks around the topic of leadership. I mean, I've been in management and leadership positions for 30, 40 years of my life. And I've been very fortunate to, I think, have learned some things along the way. And so as I was coaching people individually, I began to think, you know, maybe I need to start writing some of this down. And, you know, a lot of like what you say with GTD, it's not really brain surgery. A lot of this is, when you think through it, it's stuff we should all kind of understand at the base level. But until you have it written down and somebody talks to you about it, it's easy to forget the concepts. And so the book is, and I would hold it up, but first of all, I got its goofy screen, but actually the cover has changed since I got my draft. But the title of the book is Be a Leader, Not Just a Manager. And the subtitle to it, I think, really tells the story. And it's you are given the title of manager, but you earn the role of leader. You know, people get these jobs. They're now a fancy manager. They got a fancy title. They got a big desk. But is anybody following that? And so that's really what I started writing about. And so I wrote the book, and it's really in 3 different sections. One is developing your own personal leadership skills. The other one is building and leading a team. And then the other one deals with the third part of the book is focused on some of the contemporary issues of leadership. How do you navigate diversity? How do you manage dealing with crises, you know, that may emerge and change the way we work? And the shameless plug is, it'll be on Amazon, but it might be easier for folks to just go to my webpage, daveedwardsmedia.com, and all the information is there. So daveedwardsmedia.com.
So what's the difference between a leader and somebody that just has a title?
Well, a leader is someone who I think really takes the time to understand people, where they are, what their needs are, and are able to convey a vision of where an organization or department needs to be, and do it in such a compelling way that people get the vision, want to buy in the vision, and will work towards that vision. In the way I look at it is, being a manager is kind of a lonely world. You know, being a manager is you get the reports out, you do the kind of basic stuff. But if you really want to be good at it, you've got to be able to work through people to make bigger things happen. And it's easy to say, well, I can just delegate that. But if you don't delegate correctly, if you don't let people see why the assignment that you're giving them is important and where it fits into the bigger picture, people will resent that, oh, he's just trying to shovel his work off onto me. And so this is an opportunity of letting people learn, I think, how to do that effectively.
Cool. I've always noticed that the best leaders that I knew were on the train, and you either hopped on or you didn't, but they were going.
Yes.
And so, you know, they walked their talk. In other words, whatever that vision was, whatever was pulling or pushing on them, they were doing it. They were on. They just needed, you know, assistance or help, or could use people to be engaged with it in that process in terms of making it happen.
Yeah,
I think address that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. But I think, if you really want to be effective as a leader, you got to really, as I say, work through other people. And it's one thing to say, well, I'm just going to go, I'm going in my direction, and follow me if you want. But that's not an effective way of running a department or running a company. And I think we're now living in a society, as generations move forward, where the people who are working in the offices today, or working from home but working for companies today, want more than a paycheck. They want to feel connected to the work that they're doing. And I think that's where it's very important for leadership to provide that connection. And so I spend a good deal of the book really talking about how we make those connections for people in different generations, to get the best work out of everyone. And when we're able to do that for other people, I think we become better leaders, we run better departments, and our companies are more successful.
Yay.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Couldn't argue with that.